Hello again, everyone. Today I am here with a fountain pen favorites video. These are my recent favorites, and it's been a little while since I've done one of these videos, so I figured I was overdue. And I have a very eclectic collection here of favorites this time. And some of these do tend to be a little on the pricier side, just because either they have custom grinds or the quality of the nibs. There's various reasons. And of course, this Visconti Homo Sapiens is probably the most expensive pen I own, I think. I got it on a great deal, but still, even with that, but it's finally made it to my favorites list. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this one first. But let's go ahead and move these to the side. And I'm going to get out some paper. I have some Tomoe River paper here from a paper pad. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so I can do a little writing sample with each of these. So the first one is indeed this Visconti Homo Sapiens Dark Age pen. So I will put a link down below to my, it's not an unboxing, but it was basically my first impressions. I had a little bit of a letdown when I thought I was going to be getting a palladium nib, and I ended up getting an 18 karat gold nib instead. But I have since procured a palladium nib for this pen, and I've talked about that on the channel. I really lucked out and got it super cheap from, well, super cheap for the nib itself, from Pen Realm, who I have gotten a lot of nibs ground through Pen Realm, and they're really great. So I was really happy, and clearly this nib had been tuned because it writes beautifully. Well, let's go ahead and get into it and do the writing sample. Oh, before I do that, actually, I wanted to show you how I've been storing this pen, because it is kind of special, and I took into account a lot of recommendations when I was talking about my one big beef with the pen, which is you can't really see what you're, or how well you're filling the pen, because this is it's called a power filler, but it's essentially like a vac filler. So I did get the Visconti travel filling container, which allows you to get a pretty full fill on this pen. And I really lucked out again. I'm always on the hunt for a bargain. So this one I got at FP Nibs in Spain for, I would say, less than half what it normally sells for. So that was great, and I tacked it onto an order of some custom grind nibs, and so now I have that together with this Visconti, which has to be turned so that this pen clip does not get in the way of this pen case closing. It's also difficult to say. And this is I'm really zoomed in, so I'm trying to keep it in the frame, but still zoomed in, so when I go back to the writing sample. So this is a Galen leather 2 pen case, and I just thought it was really great to store the two of these. Visconti does sell cases, like 2 pen cases, where you could put these two things together, but they're so expensive, and this was a lot less expensive than that, and it's really great quality. So I went ahead and went with this one, and it fits pretty much perfectly. It is kind of rounded, so it's nice that this filling bottle is a little bit smaller than the pen. But I just wanted to show that to you. This is a pretty good way to store that, and I can keep it safe. Although it is a pretty sturdy pen, I would say, because it is made out of lava material, which is kind of cool, lava rock. All right, and this pen, you uncap it by pushing down and then twisting, which I kind of like. It generally will not come undone unless you are twisting it, but it's not that hard. So I'm assuming that it probably could come open and if you were tossing it in a bag or something, but I don't ever intend to do that. But let's go ahead and get on with the writing sample here. So as I was saying, this is a Visconti Homo Sapiens. Oh, and because this writes so wet, you're getting some glare off of my light. Once this starts drying, that will ease up a little bit. It's the Dark Age. The original nib was black that came with this. This is not black. This is a steel or silver finish color, and palladium itself is actually that color, so I wonder if there is even a coating on it. But it doesn't bother me too much that it's not black. Okay, so this is the dark age with a medium palladium nib. And this nib runs really, really broad. Way broader than some medium nibs. And I originally wanted to get a fine in the palladium, but that just wasn't in the stars. When I ordered this, even though I ordered a palladium nib when they were in stock when I ordered it, it took forever to arrive. And I guess they just ran out of palladium nibs because it was kind of in the transition between palladium and gold nibs. So they had run out of them, and I got the 18 karat gold black fine nib. And that's a perfectly fine nib, no pun intended. But this is just, it's amazing. It's like night and day. I super enjoy writing with this nib. So this ink here is Linen Toolbar, which also seems to have really nice smooth inks. Linen Toolbar, and it is Indigo Tegan, which is one of my all-time favorite inks. It's just really, really beautiful. Writes really smoothly in pretty much every pen I've put it in. And it's very neutral, but it still has a little bit of character. It has a lot of shading, which actually shows up really nicely with this larger nib. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the next pen here, which I have also shown on the channel before. This is the Penlux Grand in the Rainforest color, I believe. And this, I ended up putting a specialty grind nib on here. I did have to swap out the nib by pulling the nib from the friction fit housing. I have talked about that on the channel as well before. So this is, I can't remember if it's a broad or a double broad, and the Bach nibs don't say on them, but this is a Bach rose gold nib to match the trim of the pen. The original nib that came with this pen was gold in color, and I didn't, just regular yellow gold, which I didn't think went very well with this pen, so I ended up getting a custom grind rose gold. This is, I think it's a broad. It's a broad cursive smooth italic on here, and it just is really, really lovely. And the ink that I put in here is just a perfect match for the pen. So this is a Penlux. And even though it's really broad, because it is a cursive italic, it really writes very nice and not so broad. And I almost always write with my cursive italics at an angle like this, so you do kind of get that line variation coming out a lot more. So this is the Penlux Grand in Rainforest. And this is a piston fill pen, so it holds a lot of ink, which is very nice. And so this is with a, let's call it a broad cursive smooth italic from Pen Realm. And then the color here is Robert Oster Moss, which I think is just a perfect match for this pen. It's really, really lovely. Okay, let me go ahead and show you that close up real quick. And with the pen, very beautiful. And with this one, you know, I'm obviously not matching the ink to the pen, but I think the dark indigo color really goes nicely with the black. All right, so let's keep going. So this next one is a Akers Customs Vertex. So I've also shown this Vertex on the channel before. This is just their white color. They've actually started releasing some custom colors in their Vertex line, which have been really pretty. A little pricey, but the basic ones tend to be a little cheaper. But on this one, I have put a Blue Dew Flex nib. I'll put a link below to the company Blue Do. They're overseas for me here in the United States, but they sell pens with these nibs in them, and they also sell the nibs just on their own. I ordered just the nibs. I didn't order the pen, and I kind of had to figure out which pen it would fit in. It will fit in some Bach accommodating pens, but not all. So this one was actually a really tight fit in this Vertex, and it still sticks out just a tiny bit. But the converter seats in here, and because this is a cartridge converter pen, so I do have a converter in here. The converter seats on the nib, and it writes really great. I had shown this pen on the channel before doing an eyedropper conversion, which you can do. Unfortunately, the ink that I used did stain the pen, so it is a purple ink that I put in there. So I don't know why I do this, but apparently purple is one of my favorite inks for eyedropper pens, and that color tends to stain the most. So I have actually stained a few pens with some purple ink. So just FYI, when you are eyedroppering something, a light colored or a demonstrator pen, purple may stain. Blue may also stain. You know, any color is really capable of staining, but purple seems to be a big stainer. I have not gone in with any kind of cleaning product to try and get that out, but that it's okay. It doesn't bother me too much. So this pen does post, and I tend to write with it posted because it's kind of short without doing that. And so this is essentially like a dip pen, but it doesn't wear out as quickly as a flex dip pen. And I have only had it for, I'd say like a couple months at this point, and so far so good. But I must say that, and I keep talking about this one, but it's not the smoothest writing experience. It doesn't feel great when writing with it, but you can really get some really nice variation and character in your writing, which is why I like it. And it's not terrible, but it is a little scratchy, I would say. It's not super smooth. So this pen is a Akers Customs. And I'm not the best at flex writing, so you'll have to forgive my handwriting here. Akers Customs Vertex. With a Blue Do. Nib. And I don't know if you can hear when I was writing, you can hear it scratching against the paper. This is essentially like an extra fine flex. Sorry, the table is moving there a little bit. But I really like how easy it is to use, and it doesn't tend to railroad even with a converter as opposed to being dropper filled. Sometimes flex nibs tend to run a little dry and need a lot of ink. And this ink is Sailor Studio 252. Okay. I'm going to put that one to the side. And then the next one is a hand-turned pen from a company called Signature Pen Company, and the material is an abalone material, a faux abalone material, and the maker of the blank is Chad Schimmel. I don't know if that person has a different name for their business, but this was just such a unique abalone design. So many different pen blank makers are making abalone blanks, faux abalone blanks, but this I thought was really original and interesting. And I really like the little color shift back in here, and it's really, really pretty. and the pen is obviously very shiny. And then the nib I have on here is a specialty grind. It is a Franklin Christoph nib, but it is ground by the nib grinder into a Micro Architect. And I absolutely love this nib, and I love the combination of this. I love the black nib with the black accents on the pen, and it feels really nice when writing. It's really, really comfortable to hold. Most of these do not post. The only pen that I have posted so far is that Vertex, and there might be one or two others that I will post when I use them, but most hand-turned pens cannot actually be posted. So let me push this up a little bit. And this is by Signature Pen Company. And then this is the abalone color by, the blank is by Chad Schimmel or Schimmel. And then the nib with a nib grinder Micro Architect. So you will get a very thin downstroke and a wider side stroke, but it's still fine. And I absolutely love this nib. I love it for cursive writing. They ask you a bunch of questions about how you use your pens and that sort of thing before you get things custom ground from the nib grinder. So they try to cater to your writing style. But this is just lovely. They actually start with a fine nib, and then it's essentially down to an extra fine. Certainly on the downstroke, but you get this really nice variation. And then this ink here, this is by Herbin. So Herbin, they have J Herbin, which is sort of the fancier ink, and then they have the Herbin line, which is the less fancy ink. And this is L'Hermé de Cassis. Okay. So, and I especially like the ink with this, and it really sort of goes with the pink shiny bits that are here on the pen. It's just a really great combo, and I've really been enjoying writing with that one. And I'll go ahead and show you that because I didn't show you the other one close up either. And I'll show you all of these again at the end. All right, so this next one, I think I've also shown on the channel. Oh, and I may not have mentioned this, but most of these pens, I've put little washi tape markers on here to indicate the nib that is in the pen. Like here, I've actually written that this is a nib grinder Micro Architect, and then here, Blue Dew Flex nib. The washi tape does not stick to the pen when you, I mean, it sticks to the pen, but then if you want to remove it, it does not leave a residue, which is nice. So you don't have to sticky up your pens. And I have so many pens at this point that I keep forgetting what nibs are on what pens. So this is really helpful for me. It may not be the most aesthetically pleasing to have that on there. I mean, especially if you have sort of something like this Bennu, which this is, that has a lot of sparkle, but it helps me out. Okay, so this is the Bennu Minima, which is the smallest, at least I think the smallest pen, at least the shortest pen that they offer. And this is, ooh, I've forgotten the colorway on this one. It might be like red berries, berry forest, something like that. I've forgotten. That's the one thing I forgot to write down here. The only downside to this one is it doesn't post. So when you do write with it this way, so you absolutely can't post it, it won't go on. So it is a rather short pen. So if you have very large hands, this pen might not be the best for you. But I think it writes really well. This is the Bennu Minima, and it has a fine nib. This is just the Schmidt nib that comes with the pen. I did actually swap out this nib. I had another nib in the same size in an extra fine. Oh, the one that came with this was an extra fine. And then I swapped it for a fine when I put a different nib in that other pen. I do that a lot, but the fine works so nicely with this one. And let's see, where are we? This ink is Diamine Noel, which was part of the Blue series, basically in the Inkvent calendar from 2020. Lovely. It's actually very comfortable for me to hold, so it doesn't bother me that it's short like that. Even with long writing, I've written with it for long periods of time with no real issues. Yeah, it's just a great overall pen for me. But if you have big hands, this one's not going to be for you. Okay, and next we have sort of a humble pen. This one is a Pilot Praera with a medium nib. And this one continually surprises me at how smooth it is and nice it is to write with. It rarely goes dry. It's a really nice length, I think, when posted. The only problem I have with this is I had some ink left in the feed, so when I put in new ink, it essentially mixed with it and became another color. So I will tell you what I have in here. So this is a Pilot Praera. Just so lovely and smooth with a medium nib. And this is just a stainless steel Pilot medium nib. And then what I put in here was Robert Oster Sedona Red, which this does not look like. And then what was left in the feed was Diamine Christine, which is a very sort of a greenish ink. So basically the red and the green created black in my pen. So it looks like I have a black ink in here, but it writes really smoothly and I haven't had any flow issues. So this ink is so concentrated and strong that I think even with just a little bit in the feed, it's completely tainted my Sedona Red. That is something to keep in mind when putting really dark staining inks in a pen. You might have some crossover with your next ink. All right, and so then this next pen is kind of an interesting one. So I have plenty of Opus 88 Picnics. I actually have the full line of their colors now. This is a blue one, which was really hard to find because I think everybody wanted the blue one, and the Picnics are discontinued. You still can find one or two of the colors in different shops, but I think for now you're more likely to get a Cola Row model, which they have issued Cola Rows, which are now, they're called something else, but they're demo versions, which may be the closest to this now because it requires a number 5 nib as opposed to a number 6 nib. Most of the new Opus 88s have a larger nib. However, so I did manage to get this one. I won't put a link to this because you probably won't be able to find it. But it has a special nib, as you'll see here. It has an 18 karat Cartier nib. And as far as I know, these are no longer available in this configuration. I purchased this one from Peyton Street Pens. Peyton Street Pens had purchased a very large batch of Cartier gold nibs, and for a very short period of time, they were selling some that were in number 5 housing. They had essentially number 5 Yovo housing. They had essentially adapted the housing to go with this, and I have not seen them since. I pretty much got it as soon as I saw it online because I really like to have sort of a variety of nibs for my standard pens, which this is, and because this is a size 5 and this pen takes a size 5 Yovo nib, it works really, really well. And this pen, so it is it's a dropper fill pen, but you do need to screw off partially the back of this pen in order to get the ink to flow. Otherwise, you're going to have a little stopper here because there's a shaft that runs up here with a stopper at the top. But you can post it. It's actually a pretty decent length posted. So this is an Opus 88 Picnic in blue with an 18 karat gold Cartier. I think it's a medium nib. I'm just gonna, I think. They actually do have a lot of different pens that carry these Cartier nibs. So if you're interested in the Cartier nib itself, they've made some pens to adapt to the nibs because they clearly have a huge stock of them. So it's not that you can't get this nib, but you would have to get it on a pen. So I'll put a link to Peyton Street Pens and see if I can find a listing for something with this Cartier nib. And then the ink that's in here is Pilot Iroshizuku Kujaku. This nib is just beautiful. It writes beautifully. I love it. I was really impressed with it when I got it. Okay, and then the last one is this super special pen here. This is another hand-turned pen. As you can see, I've added some washi tape to indicate what's on here. So this is from a company called 1836 Custom Creations, and it's essentially like a one-man show. And I think he only sells at this point in time on Instagram. So if you want to get one of his pens, you'd have to follow him on Instagram and express interest. And I think he also does commissions. So this particular blank he made himself. It's called the Mystique, which is an X-Men reference, I believe. So this is an XL model. It's very, very large. It's probably as big as an Opus 88 demo. When I put them together, those two pens together, they're about the same size. It's very, very large. He makes a variety of different models in different sizes, so they don't all have to be this large. But I just think it's really, really beautiful. It's got some really beautiful purples in there, and you have some really beautiful blues. I just really love this. And I put a very special nib on here so that I could kind of amp up the specialness of this pen. This definitely does not post, so I'm going to be putting the cap off to the side. So this is a Bach Platinum nib, and this is a fine platinum nib. So I purchased this one, let me see, I was going to purchase it from FP Nibs, I think, and then I ended up purchasing it from Beaufort. I think it's Beaufort Inks. I can't remember the name of the shop. They're in the UK. And just given the day that I purchased it, the exchange rate was such that this was cheaper from there than it was from fpnibs.com. But they're fairly pricey for the platinum nibs, but I really wanted to try it. And I don't ever really see samples online anywhere of these platinum nibs. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show this one to you today. I might actually do a separate video on this pen and nib, but I've been really impressed with this platinum nib. A lot of people talk about platinum being super stiff. I don't find it incredibly stiff. It is definitely stiffer than gold. So 1836 Custom Creations, Mystique. And it does write broader than, like this is a fine, so it writes pretty broad for a fine. This is the Mystique XL, and this has a Bach fine platinum nib. But yeah, I really like the way this nib writes. I probably won't buy more than one because of the price, but it writes beautifully. And on this pen, I really like the combination. And then this ink that I have in here is Tachia, I believe it's Kawaii. I don't know how to pronounce that, but yeah, but it's definitely not as bouncy as a gold nib, but I don't feel like it's not as stiff as a steel nib can be either. I mean, some steel nibs can be a little bit more flexible, but it definitely feels different than both steel and gold. So it adds something else to the party for sure. But I really, really like it. So there we go. And I'll go back to the beginning here. And I notice these are all kind of darker fall-inspired colors, although by the time you see this, it will probably be almost into winter here. All right, so these are all those pens. Let me zoom out just a little bit. And there we go. I will put that next to it so you can see all those. All right. Well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you would like to keep track of future videos on my channel, please subscribe. And I hope to see you next time, but in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.